Bait used to be believed. HOLY SHIT! Well, between finding Wellwader's secret Discord server by means of directed disconnect attack, witnessing the birth of a wayward passenger, finding out how to think with portals to commit interstellar, and of course, complete and utter destruction of any and all fanart of Don Quixote featuring fetish accent on bare feet, between all of that, there was a relatively small change when viewing both our units as well as opponents. Now they have these little tags used to describe them in terms of relevant keywords. And since I have the misfortune of teaching future programmers for a living, I can give you insight on how it works. You have an array, where each element is one of these tags, and whenever something is looking for a tag, a quick search is performed through an array, either finding or not finding the relevant tag, and when finding said tag, performing some logic relevant to it. For example, N-Corp Sinclair, in his self-destructive purge, looks whether the target is a mechanical amalgam or not. Pequod Captain Ishmael looks for any of her targets and whether they are like entities or not. Blade Lineage Merceau regularly checks his allies, both alive and dead, on the subject of being a part of Blade Lineage. Resolution Ego Gift brings hope to the Faust Fumo, and the list goes on. But after looking at some tags assigned to identities, I've noticed a number of oddities. Now, obviously, these oddities can remain as such only if these tags are in their final state, so should any change occur, it's not my responsibility to update this video. On the contrary, you should use it as a reference to the state of tags during the first week after their appearance, before any changes. Also, you should definitely subscribe. To Wellwader, he asks people to subscribe to so often, his pleas have finally bled into content outside of his channel. First group I want to cover are the default identities. They now have a single tag, Limbus Company. This immediately puts me in the mood to do some hypotheticals. I'm making a new dungeon, it will be a dungeon with ego gifts, and I want specifically starting identities to be decent in it, to perform above average. So I designed an ego gift that gives a buff to identities with Limbus Company tag among their tags. Playtest and tune this buff to be above average, but not blowing stuff out of the water. I get my satisfying result, git, in my case tortoise git, commit, push, go to sleep, wake up, dungeon's broken. Who? Asgul. How did he use LCCB identities? Yes, that's right, LCCB identities, just like default identities, have only one tag of Limbus Company. In my hypothetical, where tags won't be altered, any use of tag Limbus Company will affect both default identities and LCCB identities. Also, given relatively low power level of default identities, the only use of their tag that makes sense would be to give a buff, but that buff would also affect LCCB identities, which brings me to the conclusion that any Limbus Company related identities cannot wildly outperform the default ones, because this is one gap that cannot be breached without changing tags. Next one is a courtesy of the Shrimp Man. When you look at new multi-crack office identities, you will find in their tags one of mechanical amalgam. It's deserved, obviously normal humans do not possess arms of steel or more arms than two, they are somehow more octopus-like than this Dr. Octopus wannabe. But then a particular Gregor from Roast Pattern Workshop, who has a chainsaw for an arm, which is also blatantly, obviously a prosthetic, doesn't count as a mechanical amalgam. During the Shrimp Man stream, the word of which you should definitely watch again, the chat called him for a little bit of an N-Corp fanatic flavored zealotry, which is a false accusation because the Shrimp Man didn't count other Gregor identities with a prosthetic arm as mechanical amalgams, and everyone who played as far as Canto 3 knows that a prosthetic arm looking normal on the outside doesn't stop the fanatics. Speaking of N-Corp and its fanatics, the last patch notes were quite menacing with these changes, but identity tags reveal a slightly different outcome. Yes, all N-Corp identities have an N-Corp fanatic tag now, but regular affiliation with N-Corp didn't go anywhere. All identities we have from N-Corp Kraust Squad now are both N-Corp and N-Corp fanatics. Think of it like a famous discourse from the Ace Attorney series. Every stepladder is a ladder, but not every ladder is a stepladder. Next, I do remember how during the first meeting Ahab told Ishmael that sailing with Pequod makes said sailor a fixer from 8 Association. However, looking at tags of Pequod identities, I find a lack of fixing there, yet alone 8 Association, and as usual this will be the fault of both Ishmael and the Pallid Whale. Also, Pequod Heathcliff doesn't have any tags pertaining to a certain finger syndicate. I guess the middle does forget with sufficient amount of gas being lighted. There is also a small note about how any R-Corp identity is marked simply as R-Corp, without any further division into rabbits, reindeers, rhinos, or other animals that start with an R. In the same vein, Zwei identities only have Zwei association tag without going into details on the Thous section specific, which will be apparent later. Lastly, there are a number of identities that have a tag that is unique to said identities. No other identity in the game possesses these particular tags. These are Lobotomy Corp branch of Remnant Faust, the Dead Rabbits of Dead Rabbits Marceau, Ting Tang Gen of Ting Tang Honglu, Hook Office of Hook Office Honglu, Ophi Association of Ophi Heathcliff, Los Mariachis of Mariachi Sinclair, Dawn Office of Philip Sinclair, and Twin Hook Pirates of First McGregor. If you want to create a buff just for them, you have the tag to go for it and have no side effect, and then the Shrimp Man will thank you, because a change to exactly one identity makes a solo run with that one identity that much more interesting. I cannot endorse myself solo run though. My friend owns a Koi Shifumo.
Shrimp fry.
Some of these tags will definitely be expanded. We will get more Ophi, and with any luck around the Wonder Lab, there will be more Lobotomy Corp branch characters to get identities from. But to get another Hook Office identity, it would take a Walpurgisnacht at best. Encountering any Dead Rabbits, Ting Tangs, Twin Hooks, or Mariachis is out of the question as far as the current plot direction goes. And on acquisition cutscene for Dawn Office Sinclair, you can see Salvador and Yuna, not the sinners that superposed them in that mirror world, which Catherine completely deletes and clears any chances of getting a Dawn Office identity in the future. That's all. There are other tags of interest, like telling whether a particular character is a fixer or a syndicate member, does the connection to the backstreets exist or not, and which mates follow Edgar family or the Wuthering Heights, but if you've paid attention to the story, there should be no surprises for you. Thanks for watching. Now go to AmiAmi and pre-order a medium Koi Shifumo because they're somehow not out of stock yet.
Shrimp fry.